What is up, ladies and gentlemen? Welcome to the Vanguard Project. Happy freaking Monday and to the third episode of 2022. I am super excited, and I apologize. Last week, I guess 2 weeks ago, I came down with the Rona, and I didn't have an episode queued up for last week. Wasn't able to get it edited. I sounded pretty gnarly, was not feeling super good, so we are back at it this week, ready to go. And just as a refresher for what this podcast is, I've tried to sum up my mission as growth through story, strength through community. And what I mean by that is I sit down with folks and have them share their stories with the goal of picking their brain on lessons learned, diving into their experiences, mindsets, and tools developed to hopefully share with you, with the end goal is that as you listen, you can start to take things away from the guests that get you excited about something, motivated, finding a community to join in, or tools that you can take back to your day-to-day life and maximize your life experience with. So, with all of that being said, I do my best to let the interviewees tell their story and practice active listening to dive deeper into the conversation. So, that's my style. I hope you all are able to take some awesome tidbits away. Over the past several months, I started this podcast in May of 21. I've learned an incredible amount and have been repeatedly humbled by the folks that I've sat down with and been able to engage in conversation with. So, with all of that being said, today's episode is brought to you by Black Rifle Coffee. Just this past week, we were able to get our hands on some new coffee, which I'm super excited about. We've tried the Flying Elk Silencer Smooth, and I'm currently sipping on the Gunship Light Roast. And I tell you what, normally I am the kind of guy that likes to drink dark, really thick, bottom of the barrel jet fuel coffee that really just kind of kickstarts me. But this afternoon, I'm drinking it. I'm editing it. I think it's like almost 2:30. It's 2 o'clock on a Saturday, and I am drinking the Gunship Light Roast, and it is perfect. Like, it is not super caffeinated for me, even though I'm talking really, really fast. But it's got a lot of flavor, not super bitter, not super smooth, which is kind of nice for me right now, but it's got just enough caffeine to get me over the hump of editing because I have a hard time sitting still. So with that being said, I've got a code. Get you 20% off. Use code Vanguard on Black Rifle's website to save on either independent bags of coffee, or if you're fixing to get set up with a subscription, you can save 20% off your subscription as well. Just use code Vanguard. That's it. Just Vanguard for 20% off. And that's Black Rifle on Black Rifle's website. Code Vanguard, 20% off. Please use it. Use it all the time. Tell everybody about it. But enough chat. Let's roll an awesome episode with Mr. Andy, aka the Flip-Flop Guy. What is up, ladies and gentlemen? Welcome to the Vanguard Project. For those of you new to the show, my name is Austin Jardine, and I'm just a dude outside of Boise, Idaho. I've been really fortunate to have met some pretty cool people and got introduced to some pretty awesome folks. And if you're new to the show, my goal is really just to get to know folks, share their stories, how they got to where they're at, what they're up to, and hopefully get you excited about something. Maybe share the road that these folks took to get to where they're at, and give you a good frame of reference to lean on. With that being said, I was telling Andy, we were talking a little bit. It's bright and early for me on a Saturday morning, and we're chatting, and I've got one cup of coffee in. We were talking about killing bad guys on Call of Duty. So, Andy, man, how are you doing?
I'm good, man. I'm good, dude. Thanks for having me on. I appreciate it. It's a beautiful Saturday morning here in Montana. It's nice and snowy outside. You guys have been getting a bunch of snow recently too, right?
Yeah, we did. It's melted for the most part, at least in the valley. I'm looking out the window right now, but we got a ton of snow, which is really nice because I was actually 2 weekends ago. I was up north, up in like Sun Valley in the Stanley area, and there was it was the icy snow. It was like the snow that you just don't want to be out in. And so I'm really glad because I was checking all the webcams and stuff like on Wednesday this week, and there is snow everywhere. So I'm excited because I want to go snowshoeing. Like that's my wife and I's winter shenanigans.
That's got to get warm.
Yeah. But I don't know, but it's good. So, but anyways, so I know that you and I tried to connect. So thank you for letting me reschedule. I had some crap come up on the home front, and here we are. But if you don't mind kind of just introducing yourself a little bit, and for people that don't know you, and I'll bug you and interrupt.
Yeah, my name is Andy Moeckel. I have done guided hunts. I've taught hunter's education. I cook. Prior to all this, I was a warehouse manager and ran a team of 7 employees, up to 7 employees, depending on the time of year, for about 10 years. I've been sober for 17 years. I've never had a legal drink in my life. And yeah, man, life at a million miles an hour. That's kind of how I live it. As you know, and you've probably seen a bunch, like, I just don't stop. So
Yeah, I know you're a busy dude because you just texted me earlier this week and you were in Georgia and I think I saw you were visiting a couple other fun guys back there. Yeah.
oh yeah. I went back to Georgia. I was back there with Baker and Jamie and the Hunter Recruitment Project
Nice.
and having a good time out there. We took out a bunch of first-time hunters and then another hunter who I don't think he'd hunted in over 20 plus years. So getting him back out, getting his feet wet and kind of understanding it and having a good time.
That's awesome. I've heard good things. I talked to both Jamie and Baker, and I've heard great things of the Hunter Recruitment Project. I love
Yeah,
what it's doing. So, did you?
phenomenal stuff.
Yeah, and I love. I think so. I was talking to Jamie. It's been a couple months, so I can't remember everything, but they send a lot of the meat either back with the first time hunters, but then they also donate a lot of it, right?
Yeah. Yeah. A lot of it goes to, feeding the hungry or families in need, stuff like that. It's pretty cool.
Yeah, that's super cool, particularly, considering it's Christmas and holidays and everything. But did you grow up hunting and doing all the outdoor fun stuff?
Yeah, dude. I mean, as far back as I can remember, I've always experienced hunting and the outdoors. Like, I think when I was 6 months old, I came up to Montana with my family on a hunting trip. Uh, and then, shortly or right before that or right after that was another hunting trip into the Sierra Nevada mountains of California. So yeah, I've been hunting my entire life pretty much since my first year of existence on this planet.
That's awesome. And you said you started guiding. Was that something that you like aspired to do, fell into?
No, it was so I was teaching hunter's education
Yeah.
and in California, a lot of people, and we're going back. So this is like pre-social media, pre-internet, like sure you could get on a different hunting forum or anything
Dial
like
up.
that, but so I would teach hunter's education classes and I had acquired, I think it was 800 or 1200 acres to run pig hunts on. And I would take new hunters from hunter's education and I'd walk them around and, we'd cover almost the whole entire property in a day or 2 days of hunting and teach them how to track animals, what to look for as far as sign goes and animal trails and everything like that. And most of the guiding that I would do was all for like charity events, right? So if there was a veteran charity that needed money, I would do free guided hunt. Well, I wouldn't charge the organization anything, and everybody would pay the organization instead of me. And that was kind of how I really started really getting into guiding almost every weekend, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, and stuff like that. Just because for so long, at that time, there wasn't many veteran charity organizations that either were legit or that weren't taking all the profit for themselves. Like aside from like Fisher House Foundation, right? And Fisher House, I think they take like 1 or 1.3% of their profits from their charity goes to actual in-house and paying staff and stuff like that. The other 98% all goes directly back to helping veterans and their families. So for me, it was a big thing to try to give back to our vets and help them. And also in that same time period, what I would do, I would take vets that were just coming out, retiring, whatever. And I would teach them like, okay, cool. You've got this kill skill, you learned a bunch of things. So now we're going to take those skills and give you a weapons platform that you're familiar with, and we're going to repurpose those skills into hunting animals, spending time around the campfire, and learning and understanding and trying to ease that transition back into civilian life.
Okay. So I'm thinking, how did you get to a point where you kind of knew that that's what you wanted to do? And I'm trying to think of the best way to ask this, because, I know that it's probably a little overwhelming when you're like, hey, I want to give back, right? At least now there's 1,000 ways to go find ways to give back, right?
Okay.
How did you sit down and be like, okay, great. I love hunting. I'm good at this. I'm good at teaching. I'm going to give back in this way. How did you kind of get to the point and establish yourself as that guy? Does that question make sense?
I mean, so for me, it was just mostly local stuff that I was doing in Marin and Sonoma County. And I came to the conclusion that I wanted to work with new hunters in 2008. And then I'd say I started working with vets and trying to recruit vets around 2010 and getting them out in the woods and working with them. And that was, I'd had a buddy who was all about helping vets and paying respect and everything like that. And he was a very big influence in my perception of the veteran community. And again, obviously, this is way before the social media stuff and all that kind of jazz. So I sat down one day and my biggest goal in life was like, what can I do to give back to people? What can I do to help carry the tradition, of the American way of life, which is hunting and outdoors and that's just my opinion, but what can I do to help rectify that, as well as helping vets? And, my goal was always figure out a way to make enough money where I could do that full time. And like I said, I worked a warehouse job for 10 years and I was very fortunate with where I was working, because of the fact that they kind of gave me free rein. They allowed me to go out and develop my hobbies and build on my life outside of work. Their main ethic was, we want you to come to work. We want you to do a great job, but we want you to have an abundance of life outside of work. So work is not your only place.
Yeah.
And I really took that and harnessed it. And in all my off time, depending on the day, I was getting off anywhere from 2 to 3 p.m., which gave me the rest of the day to go hunting. It'd take me 30 minutes to get to where I was hunting from where I worked. And I could have somebody meet me at my work and then we could just take off from there, or meet me at my house and we could just take off from there. So that really helped me start developing that. And then when I left that company in 2019, 2020, I can't remember. I'd already done 10 years of footwork and establishing myself, which allowed me to kind of catapult, now I have 24 hours a day, 7 days a week into what I love and what I was passionate about. And that really helped. That kind of was the set off, right? That was just like, all right, now it's time to really do this, and started doing everything that I'd been working on. Along with that, was the flip-flop stuff. And I'd been working and developing the flip-flop stuff, I think around that time, for about 2 years, and trying to figure it out and taking it to market. And with that was a whole nother can of worms. And the biggest thing for me with that in that time period was, would my grandparents approve of me taking our family tradition and what we hold sacred to market, and then also doing it all around and sharing it with everybody? And I had to sit down and have a meeting with my parents and some of my grandparents' best friends, because both my grandparents had died, and really sit down and talk to them about it. And they were like, yes, go for it. Your grandparents would be so excited, and I talked to both of my uncles, and everybody was like, yes, go for it.
Yeah.
So that was kind of when that started taking off as well, and pushing in directions with that. I also was running a podcast at the time. I still have the podcast. I I mean, I still do episodes and stuff like that, but I'm not big on marketing it. I'm not big on like really trying to get it out there. I don't, people are going to listen to it or they're not,
Right.
I mean, I remember when it started, I used to sit there and every hour I would refresh the number of downloads to see how were my downloads for that hour. And that totally consumed me.
Yep.
And I got to a point where I was like, man, this is like, I'm losing the joy in what I'm doing and I need to refresh myself. So I took a year off of doing the podcast and kind of focused on other things, building the brand and all that kind of stuff. But
yeah. So I have a couple questions kind of coming out of that. So when you said you had 10 years doing legwork, and I've got like kind of broken into the segments, right? So when you were doing your legwork, right, kind of building your brand with the guiding and giving back, right? What did that legwork look like for you?
Tedious. It's funny when people are like, oh my God, things have been an overnight success for you.
Yeah.
Like, you don't see the sleepless nights. You don't see, eating rice and beans and only venison, and that was a big reason of why I kill 3 to 5 animals a year, is because I was trying to save as much money as possible in eating, because I needed to be able to do what I was doing. Right. So like, you don't see all that kind of stuff. You don't see the phone calls and, the ups and the downs and the all arounds of it. It was tough, man. It was definitely tough. And there's times even still to this day when I'm going strong and everything is really successful, and still at the same point, it's like, what am I doing? Like the grind doesn't stop. I've been a grinder my whole life since I was a kid, and the grind doesn't stop, and the biggest thing that I faced in all of that would be like, first, failure is not an option. I'm not going to fail. I will not allow myself to fail. And when I stumble, when I fall, I pick myself back up and I keep going. And when I have doubt, I talk to somebody else and they help me along, right? And vice versa. When somebody else stumbles and falls or they need help, they can always reach out to me and talk to me about it. It's failure, I guess failure breeds success. So when I fail, or when I miss, it's not, I don't look at it as a failure. I look at it as a success. And the reason why that is that if I'm not looking at my failures as successes, then I'm going to become overwhelmed. I'm going to drown myself in failure, and I'm never going to get to that next level. I'm never going to hit that next mark. And when I fail, circle back, look at it. Okay, good. What did I do wrong? How can I correct this? What can I do in the future to make this better for myself so this doesn't happen again? And in that, what that breeds is another failure. But in that next failure, it's a success, because the 4 other failures I had didn't happen that time, right? Mm-hmm. And it, it just kind of goes like that, and slowly building and learning and building and learning and going through the emotions of success and failure.
Yeah. What has kept you going the whole time, right? Because I know that cycle sucks and it's easy to get stuck in the rut, right?
Yeah.
What kept you kind of moving forward and getting yourself back into the cycle of, okay, what did I do wrong? How do I make this better?
I mean, a lot of it is the willingness to self-assess and be completely honest with myself. And also, within the group of my peers, being able to take harsh criticism, where the criticism isn't actual criticism. It's they're telling me my flaws. I'm honestly looking at those flaws, assessing those flaws, and then moving forward with that information and taking that information and trying to restructure and rebuild and regrow. Right.
Okay. Right. So when you've got your peers and you're taking that harsh criticism, how did you get to a point where you found the right peers that you could trust to give you reasonable criticism? Right. I mean, because it's easy for friends to be dicks to each other, right? But being a constructive criticism is almost a different ball game. How did you build that trust with friends and peers?
I mean, so I've worked with, I mean, and I guess I could just say I've worked with alcoholics my whole life, right? Ever since I was probably 13 or 14 years old. Like I said, I've been sober for a long time. And part of the program that they have there is essentially constructive criticism and figuring out what went wrong, how to correct what went wrong, and then move forward and stay sober. And I took that mindset and I took that personality into a much broader spectrum of life, and really understanding that this applies to all of life, not just surrounding alcoholism. And slowly but surely, like, and with patience, the shitty people weed themselves out, right? Like the people that don't need to be in my life, they weed themselves out through, their own personal frustrations or their own personal failures, or getting upset when I give them constructive criticism and they can't take it, and things like that, right? And for me, the open-mindedness and willingness to understand that when someone is being a harsh critic of what I'm doing, there's a reason for that. And there's a learning point there that I need to pay attention to and be attentive to. And like I said, the people that aren't willing to grow kind of just, they fall off to the wayside. And the people that want to grow and want to grow together, you start finding yourself, and God, whatever it may be, puts us all in the same circles together as we continue to grow and continue to build ourselves in whatever it is that we're doing. It's almost like it's ordained to be true,
Right.
And that's what I found, is that when you're seeking lower companions, you find lower companions. And when you're seeking higher companions, sure, it's going to take a year, it's going to take 10 years, where I'm at right now, 2007, 2008 to 2021, 2022, we're talking almost 15 years in there to get to where I am today, of grinding, weeding through shitty people, serious failures, building myself back up, and then continuing to go. It's just a cycle, and it all weeds itself out as long as I stay positive, as long as my mental strength and mental capacity can handle it. At least that's what I've found.
Yeah, no, I love that. And I agree, because so I've been doing this podcast since May of this year, right? So a very short amount of time, but it's crazy because you're saying a lot of things that I'm learning, right? Where it's like, hey, if I surround myself with people and if I ask for feedback from folks that I trust, right? Kind of building that network, you slowly start to find yourself almost not like in constant contact, but always with a text message away of being like, just getting feedback and finding people that are like, you screwed this up, you did great here, try this other thing, move forward, here's somebody to give a call, right? Yeah. And it's crazy just how easy in time it becomes to surround yourself with quality people and like-minded people.
Yeah, absolutely.
So you said that when you started doing the flip-flop stuff, it was a family tradition and it was difficult to kind of determine whether or not to take that to market. What led you down that path of being like, hey, I want to I want to take the flip-flop stuff to market, and then also feeling comfortable talking to the family about
it? So my first flip-flop that I ever did, publicly, was at Kuyu, at a garage sale they were doing, which every year they would sell all their returned gear at absolute low rock bottom prices. And I mean, it was insane because people would show up from all over the country and they would camp out overnight as if they were buying a new iPhone, right? Like that was the power that was behind the gear that they were creating. And that was the drive for people that loved their gear. So I showed up and I'm in, a place full of world-class hunters. And I've spoke about this before on a bunch of podcasts. I show up and I pull out a deer leg and I start slicing up bread and getting everything ready to start feeding everybody that's in line and their staff and everything like that. And you're talking serious hardcore hunters that are hunting deer, elk, sheep, goats, whatever.
Yeah.
Yeah. You know what I mean? But they're the toughest breed of hunter. And I sat down, or I didn't sit down. I was standing up because I was cooking. And I threw this leg on the grill and started cooking it. And slowly but surely, every single person gravitated over towards it. And everybody started watching what I was doing.
Food.
Watching, yeah, right. And watching me, not only food, but this is wild game prepared in a style that none of these people have ever seen before. And they're all lifetime hunters.
Yeah.
And then they're eating it and they're like, oh my God, this is the best meal. This is the best wild game I've ever had in my life. Not only is it the best wild game, but this might arguably be the best meat I've ever had in my life. And, I fed all those guys and everybody absolutely loved it. And then I cooked for another group of hunters and I showed up to their barbecue at 7:00 and same thing. It was a kind of an industry party. There's a lot of different heads of different companies there. And I started cooking and these guys are like, it's 8:00. And I pull out a 15 or 16 pound deer leg and they look at me like, does this guy not realize how long this is going to take to cook? Like this fucking Californian dude. He's an idiot. And so I start cooking the leg there and all, again, world-class hunters, absolutely amazing guys. And they're all absolutely blown away and like jaw-struck by what I'm doing. And they're eating meat in less than a minute from the meat hitting the grill. And that was kind of when it started to develop, like, this is something more than our family tradition. This is something more than what I've, ever witnessed before, and how it's captivating the audience, is remarkable. And that was when I started bottling marinade in my garage. I'd mix in a 5-gallon bucket, I'd mix a 5-gallon batch, and I'd ladle it into 16 and 32 ounce mason jars and have a box sitting in my backyard. And folks would call me and they'd say they want sauce. And, there's a little envelope they could put their cash in and they could go in an honor system, grab a bottle, 2 bottles, whatever they paid for, and then they'd have it. So, yeah, I mean, that was kind of the start of going to production. And in that start, trying to figure out the ingredients didn't change, but I don't care what anybody says, when you're making sauce, you can't call it fresh ingredients when you're using stuff that's been dried and aged and whatever, simply based on the fact that, like, that's not fresh, and you can't bottle fresh ingredients because you get botulism, and if you get botulism, you're going to kill everybody you're feeding. That's not good.
Right.
You don't want that. So I had to learn and kind of understand what I was doing and how to build the same recipe without fresh ingredients, based on those facts.
Okay.
Right?
Now, had you been cooking like this whole time, and this was kind of like a side, like?
So yeah, I've been, and it wasn't ever a side hustle. It was just like,
something you did.
Depending on how many deer I killed, I'd be like, cool, I killed 5 deer, or I killed 3 deer this year, or 2 deer for California, you get 2 tags.
Okay.
And I would look at it as like, I killed 2 deer, I can throw 4 flip-flop parties, because you can only use the back legs for a flip-flop, right? Okay. And a flip-flop party would consist of elk burgers, fresh salmon, abalone, oysters if we had them, whatever we had caught that year and whatever was going on, that's what we'd end up cooking at a flip-flop party. And I just would love doing this for my friends, and I'd call 30, 40, 50, 60, 70 people. I think the biggest party I ever had was that I threw was maybe 200 to 300 people in my backyard in Petaluma, California. And I cooked 86-pound roaster pig in a La Caja China. And then they have a grate with La Cajas that you can throw over the charcoal bed.
Okay.
So I would cook a flip-flop over the charcoal bed of the La Caja, and everybody, and then once the legs were done and everybody was full, I'd usually do 2 legs. It was a July 4th party. And then, once that's done, well, then you lift out the pig and you throw the pig on the grill, and then you throw the pig on the table, and then everybody comes up with shredders and starts shredding the pig, and then you're doing pulled pork fucking tacos, and everybody's having a good time.
So a flip-flop. So for people, like, I feel like I'm familiar with the flip-flop. Do you mind explaining what it is?
Yeah. So the flip-flop is, and my grandfather started this in the late 1950s, early 1960s. You take the entire back leg of a deer, you cut it off right below the knee, tendons still intact. At least that's how I like it. My dad does it a little bit different than I do. You marinate the top with the sauce with our family's recipe. And sure, you could use a dry rub, you could use anything you want. There's a reason why this recipe that I sell and that I have has been used for 60, 70 years.
Yeah.
It is the best. Sure, there's people that want to do it with their own way because they're trying to promote their own brand, whatever. I care less. Go for it. If you want the real experience, you use the right marinade. You mop the marinade on the top, salt and pepper it, throw that face down over screaming hot charcoal. Marinate the top side, the side that's face up, that's not cooking. It's just a big raw slab of meat. Marinate that, salt and pepper it, flip it over in about a minute. Start slicing off all that seared venison, seared sheep, seared elk, whatever it is that you have, 1/4-inch thick steaks.
Yeah.
Once you've seared it, or once you've sliced everything off and you've got a whole new raw side of meat, then you slap sauce on it again. Start getting it going again, right? Salt and pepper it, flip it over, start slicing. And you do that, it's pretty much like an 45-minute to an hour long cook for one leg. And
I'm like drooling. That sounds really good.
It's unreal.
Yeah. So you marinate it for like a second, basically, right? And then is it just?
Yeah, I don't pre-marinate. I don't do anything like that. Like every time you flip it and flop it, it's all brand new sauce. I didn't throw it in a bucket and do whatever. Yeah.
So do you do
like off animal?
That's sweet. I just started hunting last year. Last year was my first year actually going out trying to kill something. I got my first little deer this year and I'm addicted to it. And I've been trying to find all sorts of recipes and stuff for the venison. Cause I've got, a fair chunk of meat, and it's I'm good at cooking steaks, but that's a little bit different than, venison. So I'm gonna have to go look and see. Do you do recipes and classes and stuff?
I'm working on the recipes side of it. I've been cooking wild game my whole life. And anytime, if I'm cooking a stew, or if I, whatever it is that I'm cooking, I crush it. I know that, and everybody always loves it. So I'm trying to work on having a recipes page set up on my website. I'm a one-man show, and I'm usually on the road 10 to 15 days a month. And then when I come home, it's damage control, make sure everything's good. Got to keep the girlfriend happy, spend time with her. So everything is constant. It's always constant on, so that kind of makes it difficult. It spreads me out, but that's going to be a big focus for this next coming year, and sharing wild game recipes, but not only deer recipes, salmon recipes, and other animals and fish and stuff like that we've procured over the years, and championed our own family recipes on how we do things and prepare them.
I love that because I'm a one trick pony when it comes to meals. Like I make salmon in the oven and I make steak on the skillet, and that's like all I know how to
Yeah.
do. Yeah.
With our sauce, I mean, salmon in the oven, dude. If you put that spicy reserve over that salmon when you're cooking it, absolutely unreal.
Okay.
My buddy Jet Tilla, that's one of his favorite ways that he prepares salmon for him and his wife.
Okay.
You
I'm gonna
know,
order some.
yeah, it's pretty neat.
Nice. Okay. So throughout this whole process, I imagine I know that you've struggled, you've had some really pretty big wins and everything. Throughout all of that, what are some of the things that you're like, man, I wish I would have known this? Like if a 10 years ago, younger me would have known this, I would have not made this mistake, or I would have done this sooner.
The only thing that I would say to that would be 10 years ago, I wish I would have started marketing my sauce.
Okay.
I wish that's when I wish I would have started with what I'm doing now. And I can't go back and change that. But for the most part, man, I don't really have an answer to that.
Yeah.
Because everybody's story is different, and every individual has different successes and failures. The biggest thing I would say is that when you're in a slump and when you're in failure, it doesn't don't take that to heart. It's water off a duck's back. Pick yourself up and keep going. One failure does not determine the rest of your life, and I recall a conversation I had with my uncle when I was 27 years old or 28 years old, and I had just bought the house and just got the truck, and you know what I mean? Life was happening. And in that conversation, I was like, well, my life is not done, but I gotta sneeze. My life, I was essentially being like, okay, cool. I've made it. I've arrived. And my uncle sat me down and he was like, my life didn't start until after I was 30.
Yeah.
He's like, so to accept where you are is where you want to be for the rest of your life isn't necessarily a good thing.
Yeah.
There's more out there. There's more living to do. There's more things to do. And that coming from my uncle was paramount. And it paramount, especially to even where I am today and how I live my life today. My uncle's life was absolutely bananas. He developed the housing for the underwater camera for Nikon. His Hollywood studio career was absolutely insane. His National Geographic photography career was equally as insane. And him and his buddies were some of the first people that were getting out there diving and finding all these new things and checking out underwater life and great white sharks and whales and the whole deal. So for me, that gave me inspiration to a better way that I wanted to live my life. And I role modeled, or however you want to put it, my life after how my uncle lived his life. Not many people can say that he spent time with the Kennedys and that he spent time with Fidel Castro in the same sentence, and that was how my uncle lived his life. And for me, that's how I want to be able to live my life. I want to be able to say that I spent time with this person and was spending time with that person, and have it be two mind-blowing people from two different places, and fortunately, I've gotten to that kind of point where I get to spend time with some of the most remarkable people on planet Earth.
Yeah.
That are really doing things and that are really making a change. And coupled in that is that I'm really getting to do things. And my goal is to change the hunting industry as it's been sitting and revolutionize some things. And I've done that, and I'm doing that. Every time I go cook, I'm changing hearts and minds of people that don't hunt, hearts and minds of people that are anti-hunting, and hearts and minds of people that do hunt, and how they're packing out their animals and how they're going to serve their wild game to their family and friends.
Yeah. So when you talk about inspiration and kind of wanting to spend time with big people in, you know, in different sentences in different scenarios, right, and say that I've done these things. How
Mhm.
did you sit down and like put together like a list of goals and things where you're like, hey, in 3 years I want to be here and here's the type of
No,
conversation? No, you just happened.
goal. I mean, I have a list of goals and stuff like that, but not in that direction. I mean,
Okay.
obviously, I have dream people that I'd love to cook for, um, but I never really sat down and was like, this is what I want to do, and this is where I want to be in 3 years, because that doesn't matter to me. I mean, the biggest thing for me is that I want to cook amazing food for amazing people, and I want to change their opinion on wild game.
Okay.
And it doesn't matter what walk of life they're from. I don't care if they're, you know what I mean? If Obama called me tomorrow and Obama was like, I've seen what you do and I really love it and I want you to come cook, 100% I would show up and
Yeah.
go cook. Because to sit down with that man, a former president of the United States, and possibly have the ability to change his opinion on wild game, how wild game is cooked and prepared, and on the backside of that, change his opinion about hunters and how hunters are, and what we do and what we procure for our family and friends, like that would be life changing
Yeah.
for all hunters across the board, for every outdoorsman in the United States. That would be an experience that would change, tons of different things. So like it was never really like, it was never really a set out determination of like, I just want to cook for big names and big people. It was a set out determination of, I want to change the hearts and minds of every single person that I can with the food that I prepare, and the way that I prepare it.
Yeah. So when you say change the hearts and minds, change the opinions, right? What is it that you're trying to impart on those people?
That wild game doesn't taste like shit. That hunters, we aren't Elmer Fudd. You know what I mean? Like, we aren't guys that just drive around in trucks, getting drunk all the time, handling firearms while we're fucking trashed. Like, there's so much more to our lifestyle and what we're doing than that, and sure, maybe in the 1990s or 1980s, it was really easy to put all hunters lumped into that category. But at the end of the day, I'd say 90% of us are good people. You know what I mean? 90% of us are just out there trying to make an honest living and trying to do things the right way. And in that path, we're just trying to be self-sufficient. And majority of hunters are trying to help other people.
Mm-hmm.
We're not bad people. And I've been, pretty lucky and fortunate in a lot of the places where I've gotten to cook, where I get to show that, and be an example of what the hunting community can look like. And that, we can be open-minded people, we can be understanding people, we can be genuine people while we hunt. And hunting doesn't take that away from us. Killing an animal doesn't take that away from us,
Yeah. Yeah. I think I've learning, right? I started to dip my toes into a lot of this stuff over the past 2 years, right? As far as, obviously like the cooking of wild game is something I'm learning now, right? But not everybody is Elmer Fudd, right? It is so much more difficult to actually get up on an animal, kill it. There's so much more to all of it that is like, it's like, I don't know, it's an experience, right? That you just can't help but live without, or like live with, right? Like, I don't know. I don't know how to describe it. It's just so much fun and difficult and challenging, and you have to learn how to do it. And everybody's got their way of doing it. And then I don't know.
There's so many layers to it, you know what I mean? From learning and understanding and comprehending the gear that we're using, to trying to cut down every single ounce of weight that we can if we're going backpacking further into the backcountry, picking out the right layering method that's going to keep us warm, whether it's hot or whether it's, I've hunted in California in 117 degree heat in July, and I've hunted in Montana when it's -20 out,
Yeah.
So there's such an extreme level to all of it. So, you pick out your gear, and then, all right, where am I going to hunt? And you have to figure out where you're going to hunt and understand the animal, understand the area, understand the topography, everything that's going on to, all right, I've got my animal on the ground. I've taken my shot. I've done what I need to do. Now the work begins.
Yep.
Now I have to cut this animal up. Now I have to put it into game bags. Now I have to pack it out off the mountain. And are you 5 miles back? Are you 10 miles back? Is there water on your way out? Do you only have 32 ounces of water left? Did your hose, your bladder hose, did that get frozen while you were hiking? Right. It's so cold out. Like, what are the obstructions in there? What's going to happen while we're out there? And what's going to make us a successful hunter? And everybody gauges their success differently. Some people, their success is they just had a great experience walking their rifle around in the woods. Some people is I killed an animal and that's my success. That's a whole different rabbit hole. But while you're out there and you're freezing cold, or you're 10 days in and you miss your family and your wife and kids. I don't have a wife and kids, but you miss your family, and that stuff starts teetering on you and weighing on you. Do you stay and wait it out and continue for your last 5 days, or do you call it quits because you're not seeing what you want and you're going back home? Or do you take a smaller animal than what you wanted to take because, well, the pressure of success weighs so heavily in your head, or you just hunting for meat? There's so many different layers of mental stress that happen to every individual hunter on an individual basis. What do you do there? How do you navigate that? And part of hunting to me is learning how to navigate that and learning what I'm okay with and what I'm comfortable with for myself.
Yeah. Yeah. How did you get down that? And this is totally like, I know a case by case, super personal question, but like, how did you get to a point where you're like, okay, great, I know that when I'm going after a sheep or when I'm going after an elk, this is what I would be comfortable with and would call it quits on,
My parameters of what
animal
I'll take.
Yeah. I know that's a loaded question, but
it's not really though. I mean, it's different for everybody. And I'm not going to sit here and say that, I've killed my fair share of small deer, spiked forks, barely legal bucks in California, and I've killed my fair share of small animals. And to be honest, it just gets down, I've got a buddy, his name is Doug Dreher, and Doug is a prolific hunter, and Doug is a prolific animal killer. And, I started hanging out with him and his brother, and they would send me a text in the beginning of the season, like, if you don't kill a big deer, I don't want to see it. Right. And right. But we're also at a point where, by now I've killed 20 or 30 deer with my bow and with my rifle. And, it's time to stop killing small deer. And, I think my first season where I ended up killing I killed 2 really good deer in California in 1 year. I think they were like 5 or 6 days apart. I had passed on, 14, 15 different deer. And in the area where I hunted in California, you're looking at 3% success on public land.
Wow.
So to pass a deer is huge. To pass that many deer is even bigger. But also, I had 20 days, I had 30, 40 days to hunt, where I'm spending that much time in the field. I cannot shoot a deer on day 2, day 10, day 15, and stay out there and stay after it until the right animal that I choose to kill comes across my field of vision.
Okay. Yeah. It's funny because like so this last year, I got my first little deer, and we were out, and there was some does. They were fat does at like 700 yards, but it was like straight down and straight back up to get to where they were at. And it first thing in the morning, we're like, we haven't had breakfast yet. Like, I don't want to have to like, have to do that. And so the deer that I ended up taking was just this small little yearling. Like, he had big ears. He looked a lot bigger than when you get up on him. He's like pretty dinky, but I was like, you know what? It's my first one. Not going to be choosy. Everything's fine. Know how to do it. I need to learn one, that I can pull the trigger, right? And how to process it after. And now that it's like, okay, great, I've got my first one under my belt. It's like, okay, I know where to look, know how to track them, know how to see, know how to find them, know where they're at, know how to pack. Well, we didn't have to, it was like right outside of camp. So we pretty much just like drug him back to camp. But, it was one of those things where it was like, okay, not going to be picky. Anything, if it moves, it's going down because I will eat it.
If it's legal, take it.
Yeah, exactly.
And that's okay though. But that's okay. Like people, I think it kind of gets lost these days with social media where like people are so glued to the idea of they have to kill something big, and there's an abundance of, wet hunters. And when I say wet hunter, I'll put it to like anybody that's like a 1 to 5 year old hunter, maybe even 7 to 10 year old hunter, depending on how many animals they've actually killed in the field. There's a lot of wet hunters that are putting themselves under so much stress where they're afraid of the criticism of social media to kill something small. Where for me, I've got a mountain of skulls of animals that I've killed small that took me to get to the point where I'm comfortable doing what I do. It's like this year for elk season, like I had plenty of bulls at 25 yards with my rifle that I could have killed, but they weren't what I was looking for. They weren't the caliber of elk that I was looking for. And what that's kind of gotten to for me is, now I'm looking for an older, more mature animal instead of a younger coming up animal.
Sure.
And sure, maybe somebody else went and killed that same animal, 5 days later, but that's their choice. That's their personal choice. And for me, I'm at a point in my life where I can take that next step and put the time and effort and energy into finding something that's bigger. I mean, I could have killed, hundreds of cows this year, and that's not what I was looking for at the time. So I didn't do it because it wasn't, I'd rather be patient. I'd rather wait it out,
Yeah. So when you say it's not the elk that you're looking for, is that based off of skill but like the skill and difficulty in getting to it? Like, are you like in like a weird way kind of leveling yourself up where it's like, hey, I've spent 3 years, I can go easily find, a Forky now and it's no big deal. And now I need to go find something else and something else. Are you kind of like pushing yourself up that way? Is that what you're talking about?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, that, and then also I like to surround myself with hunters that are much better, more efficient hunters than I am, and I like to think of myself as an efficient hunter, but I want to swim in a pool of people that are way better than me, because that way I'm always learning. I have to stay teachable. I have to stay understanding that, like, dude, I'm not at the top of my game, and I'm never going to be at the top of my game when it comes to hunting. There are so many more amazing hunters out there than me, and there's so much more information that I can learn from all of these different people, and that's kind of why I surround myself with people from all different walks of life when it comes to hunting, because everybody has tangible information that can help me become a better hunter and a better outdoorsman and a more ethical person when I'm hunting.
Okay. Got it. Okay. So is there anything that before I've got maybe another personal question, but before we move into that, is there anything in either the hunting industry, cooking, things that you would like people to be aware of, maybe if they are trying to get into hunting? Because I think that as far as listeners go, I touch on a lot of different folks that maybe don't hunt. Is there anything that you were like, hey, if you're thinking about it, go do this or go find this? Any advice?
Yeah. If you're thinking about getting into archery, hunting, the biggest thing I would say with archery is don't take one person's word for it on what bow is the best bow, right? find an archery shop that's local to you. Go to that archery shop, shoot a bear, shoot a Hoyt, shoot a Matthews, shoot a Bowtech, shoot a PSE, shoot all of these different bows until you find the bow that fits best in your hand. And same with rifles. If you're going to get into rifle hunting, find the rifle that works best for you. If you have friends that have rifles, go out, shoot their rifles, see what works best for you, because what works best for me is not going to work best for you. You don't have to buy into this, brand of thinking that like, oh, well, this person shoots that bow, it must be the best bow, so I'm going to go shoot that bow. Like, no, because if I did that, I'd be shooting a bow that I don't like, that doesn't work well for me, and I've never liked. I don't like the function of it. I don't, you know what I mean?
Yep.
But that's my personal preference, right? Like, I'm not going to go use something that doesn't work well for me in another area of my life because it works well for somebody else. I'm going to find what works best for me as an individual and then use that, because that's what works best for me, and it, you'll find out different things about different products that maybe this person's okay with that and this person's not okay with that. You know what I mean? So it all kind of comes down to what fits you and suits you best as an individual.
Yeah. That's very true. It's funny because, to your point earlier about social media and big, finding big animals, right? You can't compare what works best for you with somebody else. Like, I shoot Bergaro rifles for hunting, right? And it's like, hey, not only did I get a deal on it because it was used, but like, I know that rifle, I know how it works, how it functions. I love the feel. I love the trigger. I know where it's going to break. But, I know that there are other big name hunters that use Weatherby. It's like, I've never played with a Weatherby. I have no idea. I'm not going to go buy one because I don't know how it works, without reading about it. And archery hunting is challenging, frustrating. Like, I feel like shooting a bow is harder than shooting a rifle.
It can be.
Yeah.
There's a lot more that goes on in that flight.
Dude. Well, that, and so I bought my first bow. Like, I went all out this past 2 years, right? But like, I bought my first bow and I was playing with it in the front yard, and I went to the Total Archery Challenge, and it's nuts how like just a small little change in your back and it's off. You're done. That's it. You missed.
Throw your shot.
Yep. Okay. Well, I've got one more question. Might be a little personal, but I'm curious because I can relate. So you don't drink anymore.
Nope.
You haven't had a legal drink. So I had a drink on my wedding night, and then I had a drink when I killed my first deer. And those are the only two drinks I've had in probably 3 years now, 3 or 4 years. Because my wife and I stopped drinking, I think it was 2018, I think. What led you to stop drinking?
Alcoholism, man.
Yeah.
I was an out of control alcoholic. There was not a time in my life where I could be like, cool, I'm not going to drink today. At the end of my drinking, I was 19 years old. I drank enough. I had drinking more than most people probably drink in their entire life. I was living in my car. I was homeless. I had plenty of couches I could crash on, but in that time period, being able to ask friends to sleep on their couch is humiliating when you have no other place to go. So sleeping in your car is much more logical explanation.
Sure.
Because my ego and my pride couldn't take that kind of smash. So I'd just camp out in my vehicle. Sometimes I'd sleep on couches, or if I knew my family was out of town, I'd find a way to break into their house and sleep in their house.
Nice.
My family wanted nothing to do with me. Not many people wanted anything to do with me because I was a fucking terrible human. I had lost 2 different jobs back to back, and kind of came to the decision one day, which I immediately followed up with action, that I couldn't drink. I couldn't live my life like this, and for me to drink is to die, and people say jails, institutions, and death. Like, I've been jailed because of my drinking and my drug addiction. I've been institutionalized because of my drinking and my drug addiction. I've been institutionalized because of my mental capacity and what I could handle. And, I didn't know how to deal with my problems. So I thought suicide was the best way, and I chalk that up to my alcoholism and my alcoholic brain not being able to, again, handle leveling of pride and ego to do something better for myself. And when I was 19, I stopped doing everything I was doing and decided to live a better life. And then I took action and the steps that were required in order for me to succeed in that realm.
What helped you make the decision to stop and then push you to follow up with action?
I mean, where I was with my life,
Yeah.
I was at rock bottom. It did not get lower than that. That was, it always gets lower than that. It's all depending on how deep you're willing to dig and what you're actually going to call your own personal rock bottom.
Sure.
But I had gotten to a point where it was like, I'm going to die, and I don't want to die. I want to live. And if I hadn't have made that decision, I'd probably be in prison right now, or I'd be dead. And that is 100% cut and dry. Like, I had pretty much lost everything in my life. And those were my last two houses on the block, or complete 180, go in a different direction and actually do something to better myself. And that was the direction that I chose.
Yeah.
So
I know that I've talked to several folks about, alcoholism, suicide, and making their 180s. What advice do you have for people that might be listening, right? And a lot of guys that I've talked to about have been law enforcement shitheads growing up, retiring from the military, that really don't have that sense of direction, right? What advice do you have for folks to help make that 180 that you've learned, to either hit rock bottom faster to find that 180, right? Or pull themselves out of whatever the hole they're digging?
I'll speak. I don't know about hitting the rock bottom faster. Everybody hits it at their own pace. But when you make that decision to change your life, you have to do it. Like, there isn't a safety fallback. There's nothing that's going to catch you from digging deeper into another rock bottom. The only thing that's going to help, the only thing that helped me was a God consciousness, understanding God, accepting God, because I had been angry at God for almost my entire life, for a myriad of different reasons. And then having faith and trusting that everything is going to be okay no matter what. Doesn't matter how dark it gets if I'm sober. It doesn't matter, how painful it gets or anything like that. I'm sober. It's a good day. I'm not shitting blood. I'm not living in my car. My parents love me. My family wants to have me around all the time. I have a host of friends that's remarkable and unbelievable. And those people count on me and depend on me to be good, right? So, like, I can either choose to give all that up, or I can choose to go back to drinking and digging those rock bottoms. And I choose to live, because life without alcohol and without drugs is way better than any other life that I could have imagined for myself.
Yeah. What do you mean by the God consciousness?
Like I said, so for a long time, I was anti-God. I was anti, and my understanding of God is not necessarily, a religious man's understanding of God. And the difficulty with me in religion, that's a whole nother podcast, right? So I had to come to terms with, there is a power greater than myself, and I am not the greatest power in the world. I am not the dictator of everything that goes on. Everything that I've had in my life, the success, everything is a 100% result of a power greater than myself working in my life, and me having faith in that power, that everything is going to be okay. The God consciousness is being aware of that and understanding that, and being willing and open-minded enough to expand and continue to grow as a human being in that in that in blah, 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 in that area.
Yeah.
You know, and the way that it was put to me, because like I said, I struggled with religion. I struggled with the word God. I would not use that word for a lot of years. What I've come to find is that everybody has a different God all over the world. There's several gods. When you really get down to it, you know. And I found my God in nature, right? And the way that it was put to me was wake up in the morning and tell the sun not to rise. And my buddy calls me at 4 a.m. He's like, all right, get your ass out of bed, make your cup of coffee and go sit on your porch. And I did that. And I told the sun not to rise, right? Because that's what I needed to do. Like that was the extent, that was the obsession in my mind that I could control what the fuck is going on in my life. And I went out and I sat there and I was like, don't rise. Okay, go tell the waves to not come in, right? Go tell the trees not to grow. Go tell the wind not to blow. And I mean, obviously I knew walking into these situations that I couldn't stop any of this from happening, but like, you know, for whatever sake, like I'm still going to go do it. I'm still going to go fucking try because I'm stubborn and I'm an alcoholic and I'm a fucking asshole. Right. Not a lot. I mean, that's changed, but, so I go out and I do these things, and I found in nature a higher power. I found a God in nature. Nature is my church. When I'm out trekking through 18 inches of snow and I have my rifle slung on my back and my backpack over my shoulders, and it's me and the elements and the wildlife, that's my church. That's where I find myself. That's when I have my most groundbreaking moments and achievements in my thought process and my psyche, you know, and I feed off of that, and I continue to grow off of that as an individual, and find a better way to live my life.
So another maybe last question.
We're good, man. We're good.
No, this is good. I haven't had like I love these conversations. So it's funny because like growing up, you know, I didn't go to church growing up, but when I was in high school is when I really started, and I actually had I was teaching Sunday school. I had my minister's license and all that fun stuff. But it's interesting because like I grew up pretty like logic based, you know, so it was really hard for a long time for me to like accept faith. Like there being a God was the most challenging thing for me to like believe in, because it's like I can't prove it, I can't see it, I can't touch it, I can't do anything. Like you've got this book and that's like it, right? Yeah. But it's funny because you talking about finding God and kind of those existential moments out in nature, you know, like I've talked to other people about it and I can relate to that, where it's like you can't control any of these things, you know, they're all going to happen regardless. They're here anyways. You're not the end all be all for everything. You can't tell the sun to rise. You know, I just think it's unique because like I can relate to like the being super stubborn and having to do something that like when you say it now, you're probably like, did I really have to do that? Like that sounds fucking crazy. But like I can relate because like I've done stuff where it's like I literally had to do like X, Y, and Z thing to prove to myself, right? Nobody else, but to prove to myself that like this is happening and it's okay, you know?
Yeah.
So I don't know. But yeah, I don't know. It's cool. Anyways, is there I'm just thinking about it now. Like I'm gonna go up to Horseshoe Bend this morning and I'm like, man, now I got stuff to think about. Like this is good. I was gonna go download another audiobook, but like now I can just sit there with the dog in the backseat and be like, let's talk about life, bud.
Yeah. Right.
Okay. Well, is there anything else that you have learned, feels important, would like to get out there that maybe you don't get asked a lot?
I mean, the biggest thing is, man, is, you know, treat everybody with respect, treat everybody with compassion. We never know what the next person is going through, no matter what they're showing on the surface. We never know what's going on in someone else's personal life, what's going on in someone else's head, you know, and have empathy for that. and try to figure out what can I do myself to help the next person through whatever it is they're going through, whether they're talking about it or not, and what can I add to their life. I would much rather leave someone with a smile than leave someone, agitated and upset, simply because I know on my worst days, I won't ever show it, and in that, when someone is kind to me and when someone is generous and someone helps me out when I'm on my worst days, that gives me faith in humanity, and that gives me faith in the ability that we're all in this together. It doesn't matter what any individual is suffering from. We're all in this together, and we can all help each other out, and we can all grow in the right direction together. And that's been one of the biggest saving graces for me in my entire life.
Yeah. Okay. I love it. Well, thanks, man. I appreciate you. This is a lot of fun.
Yeah.
I'm glad we got this down. Andy, once again, thanks for taking the time to sit down with me, man. I hope everybody listening, I hope you all took some good information away as far as maybe taking those next steps, getting into marketing, really just jumping into whatever it is that you're passionate about, or maybe taking some good existential thoughts away to go think about and tackle on your own. With that being said, like I said earlier at the beginning, this episode is brought to you by Black Rifle Coffee. Be sure to use code Vanguard for 20% off, including single bags and subscriptions. Code Vanguard for 20%. Otherwise, in the episode description will be some other codes that you can go use for a variety of other companies. But that is enough chit chat for today. I hope you all have a wonderful week, and we will catch you next time.